All right, let's now shift our attention to the other big story. While there is war that is ongoing, there are also some diplomatic efforts that are being made by Trump and the members of his administration, where foreign ministers from G7 nations and invited countries have gathered for the second day of their summit in France. And amongst those attending this is the American Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, who has joined his counterparts from leading Western democracies and other nations. But this round of talks is expected to be a lot more complex than usual. Now, Rubio is expected to face a pretty hard time selling the American strategy during its ongoing war on Iran. The summit is being held at the Wadi Cherne Abbey, a historic 12th century former monastery that is located near Paris.
Okay.
The G7 foreign ministers, in fact, held a working session on peace and security as a two-day ministerial summit in France approached its final hours. Now, even the Indian Foreign Minister S. Jaishankar is also present at this meeting. In a post on X, Jaishankar said that he had held some pretty useful talks with Marco Rubio. Now, before the sessions began, the foreign ministers, in fact, gathered for a group photograph. The meeting is unfolding against the backdrop of the wars that are unfolding in Iran and also in Ukraine. And Rubio is expected to face some pretty tough questions as he will try to present the American position about these ongoing wars. When he was departing for the summit, the reporters had asked him about the reception that he anticipated, and Marco Rubio had said that he was actually eager to meet his G7 counterparts. Listen.
Well, it's in their interest to help. The other countries get far more of their fuel from there than we do.
All right, that's his response. Other countries there get far more fuel from out of the Strait of Hormuz than the Americans do. That is the pitch of Marco Rubio. Now, many participating nations are seeking clarity on Washington's strategy, especially regarding the military operations involving the United States and Israel. And the U.S. allies are concerned about American foreign policy under Donald Trump, and they also want to know if diplomatic options remain open to end this war. Now, Rubio left Washington for the G7 meeting just hours after Donald Trump complained very bitterly about NATO countries. Now, Trump has accused the NATO nations of not stepping up to help the United States of America and Israel in this war on Iran. His remarks have added strain to America's ties with European partners. Now, those in Europe are still reacting to the earlier remarks made by Donald Trump on issues such as Greenland and also European nations' defense commitments to the NATO military alliance. Time and again, Trump has complained that he can't gather support for his war on Iran. NATO and most allies have rebuffed his requests for aid in trying to reopen the Strait of Hormuz, where Iran's de facto blockade has disrupted all deliveries and has caused energy costs to surge. Now, France, which is hosting the summit, has expressed caution about the war. French officials have indicated that there was very limited prior consultation with allies before the Americans and the Israelis started this war unilaterally. Now, at the same time, efforts are, of course, underway to plan for the reopening of the key shipping routes once conditions improve. As the summit continues, the focus remains on managing the crisis, maintaining unity amongst allies, and exploring possible steps to reduce tensions in the region. And WION's correspondent Susan Tehrani is tracking the developments for us from New York and is joining us live from New York. Susan, this is going to be an interesting conversation that Marco Rubio will have with his allies in Europe, especially given what Donald Trump has said about the European allies of America who are part of the NATO military alliance, where he called the NATO nations to be cowards, to not step up to what he wanted them to do in the Strait of Hormuz. What sort of a reaction is Marco Rubio expecting there, and how is he planning to sell the American plan for what America intends to do in Iran? Does America even have a plan?
Yes, America does have a plan, and Marco Rubio is expected to go and try to relay this message that it's into the interest of every G7 nation to have the Strait of Hormuz open. Regarding, Europe being categorically firm on saying that this is in no way our war, Marco Rubio is expected to talk to these leaders and these counterparts of his and say that Ukraine wasn't our war either, but the United States contributed fairly, hoping that there will be some kind of opening and that these European countries will ultimately step up to assist the United States. It's very unlikely. So far, he's received a very frosty reception from European allies, but also several European governments are also pushing back, asking Marco Rubio about reports that Russia is aiding Iran in satellite surveillance and how the United States plans to deal with that, considering the fact that their concern is Ukraine and to what extent Russia is in lockstep with the Iranians in, attacking American and Israeli forces, and how would that turn out if NATO got involved? There is a lot of differences between the two sides. It's hard to imagine that Marco Rubio would come back with something substantial, but anything could happen. But I think America's message is clear. They're saying that, open the Strait of Hormuz. It's to your benefit. We've helped you on Ukraine. It's your turn to help us. And Europe is not budging. They don't want to get involved. And they're kind of insulted, not only by President Trump's words, but also because they weren't consulted before this war began.
Yeah, they were not consulted before this war began. And once this war is started and the Strait of Hormuz is shut, American president wants them to now step in and help him out in a problem that he seems to have got himself into. Thank you very much indeed, Susan Tehrani, for joining us from New York with those details there. For all the latest news, download the WION app and subscribe to our YouTube channel.